Hi everyone, this week this paper looks at the use of digital technologies for early literacy development of Indigenous students in the Northern Territory. Indigenous populations worldwide tend to have lower reading outcomes than the general population. In the Northern Territory where this study took place, reading outcomes were significantly lower than the general population. This is also true of Queensland and the rest of Australia. Some studies show that computer and digital technologies instructional software can be of benefit to struggling readers, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. The study looked at this program called Abracadabra, which is a free web-based program. It's a Canadian program, but it has been contributed to by academics from Charles Darwin University. So I'll put a link in the subject site so that you can click on that and you can have a better look at the software and how it was developed, who's been involved, and whether you think the software would be useful. The study showed gains for students across all the groups when it was being used, because the study didn't just look at Indigenous students, it looked at non-Indigenous students as well. They all had gains, but the interesting thing was the gains were greater with the Indigenous group. We need to try proven methods with digital technologies because Indigenous students really need something that will help, because we've traditionally had this difference between students living in Indigenous remote communities compared to other areas, and there's quite a few advantages that are on offer from digital technologies of different types. Some of the problems that schools have and ECE centres that have contributed to this state of affairs is that in remote Indigenous schools and ECE centres, it's always a struggle to attract teachers and staff, because there's only a certain number of people that want to live out in really remote areas. And they struggle to attract teachers who are skilled in teaching early years literacy. So out of the teachers that they get to go there, they may not have that particular expertise. And many staff members aren't familiar with early childhood teaching techniques, and we all know how critical it is in the early years to start these skills off well and to give students such a good foundation so that they can go ahead with their development. And if they don't have that, well, we know the sort of problems that can happen then. Another thing is that many people that go out to teach in these areas aren't familiar with or experienced with teaching Indigenous students, sometimes don't know really much about the Indigenous culture, and there's a very high turnover of teachers, because sometimes incentives are offered for people to go out to remote areas and rural areas, and then they plan to go out there for a certain amount of time. If it's increased salary, save that money and then go back somewhere else, so you're continually getting staff turned over, and this causes a problem. But this means that digital technologies have a particular thing to offer, and that is, if it's delivered through digital technologies with scaffolding from teachers, then that offers continuity and consistency, because they're using these programs, and if teachers leave, somebody else can come in and be shown how to use that where they're up to, and then they can continue, instead of starting something completely different every time there's turnover of staff. Another thing is, if the software is sufficiently engaging, it can help make gains through the motivational effects of the software, and also by offering more intense practice. That only happens if the software is well designed so that it does come across in a very engaging way for students, and the students then are motivated by it. But if students don't get much of an opportunity to use digital technologies, I've found that that in itself can be a motivating thing. So go ahead and read through the paper and explore the website, but also consider what other programs are on offer to assist Indigenous students to develop in literacy and other areas. This is just one example, to give you a taste of the sort of thing that's out there, and a research study to show that it's been effective.